Lights on. Action.
Ric
Look at all the
Martelino,
people here tonight.
here we are.
Oh my gosh.
Hit the subscribe button.
Yeah.
So
look.
thank you for being here. Thank you for the headache that this has been for you. I want to commend you on your.
I'm not the savviest tech person there on the world. I have the phone and that's about it.
Yeah. Well, Is it a flip? It's not a flip phone.
No.
Okay, so you're a little high tech.
Yeah. Yeah. Semi high tech. Yeah. I had to give that up last week.
Okay. The flip phone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So how you doing these days?
I'm doing good. It's I can't complain. I'm still above ground.
You're what do you like? I'm looking at your I'm looking at your band list, and you're like,
I'm busy.
Yeah.
I mean, they're
who is doing what now?
Let's see. Of course, I have the band Hot Lucy. I mean, we're always active, and things have picked up the last couple months. We've had it started probably back in February. Things just started picking up. I don't know what happened, but we started getting a couple Fridays, a couple Saturdays, a couple Fridays and Saturdays, and then I'm also in another band, Green 13.
Yeah.
Then we started picking up gigs, and then I was doing gigs with them on weekends and gigs with Hot Lucy on weekends. So it was back and forth, and I've probably in the last 2 months, every weekend I've had I've had a gig, either a Friday or a Saturday, or a Friday and a Saturday, which
are these in public places?
There some of them might be limited access as far as as much as the mandate will allow, for the for the to be legal, so to speak, so I mean, everything's, crowds are not as large as you would think, but it's I'm probably,
people are still a little shaky.
Well, you have some people that are a little gun shy, so to speak, but I'm in the best position of anybody on stage. I'm the most socially distanced person behind the kit. I'm 6 feet from everybody. So I don't have to worry. Plus, I'm just back here flailing away. I'm fighting off the COVID.
Yeah. You need one of those glass things around your drum set.
You know what? I did have a show that had one of those, but it was just so annoying.
Yeah.
And the thing about it is, the band that I was with, everybody uses like Kemper systems and in-ears, and so I'm so used to live stage sound, and then with that shield in front of me, it just kind of blocked me off from everything.
It takes the fun away.
Yeah, so needless to say, I kind of just took it away, I don't think the club owner knew that I was well. I did ask him. I asked the club owner if it was possible, and then it's like, I said, okay, and I just did it anyway. Because I made up some stupid reason as to why,
You couldn't hear.
Yeah. Well, I said, everybody's using in-ear systems and I don't, so everybody can hear themselves, but I can't hear them. So I have to have, it has to be open. And then he's like, oh, I knew what the hell I was talking about. But but in a sense, it's true.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of like, even though I can see everybody, it's just a different kind of, it's a barrier, but, but still, it just kind of cuts you off a little bit, at least,
like a boy in a plastic bubble.
Yeah, that's what I felt like. I felt like the salad in the salad bar.
How did you get started? Like way back in the way back machine. So what
As
was the
far as
beginning?
playing
In music.
music, my family was very musical. You know, everybody, I can remember grandparents, aunts, uncles playing, you know, piano. So I don't know what it was with families back then, but it's like we need, you know, the kids always had to be introduced to piano, to play piano. My sister was a really good pianist, and she did like all the, what do you call it, the recitals and stuff, and she was really good. I I studied a little bit, but I never got that far, you know. And then as far as drums, I had an uncle, my dad's brother, my uncle Joe. He was the one. His house, he, you know, in his younger day when I was a kid, you know, he had bands that he played with, and I just remember it was the same color like Ringo's kit, like the Black Oyster Pearl kit,
Okay.
but it was a Gretsch kit, you know, Zildjian cymbals. And as a kid, I used to get back there and just tool around and, you know, make noise on it. But as I got older, you know, I wanted to learn how to play, and he would show me some stuff on it. And then you know, when I always wanted to play the drums whenever I would go to his house, you know. So and then I never really got a real drum set till I was like maybe 12, you know, like probably like a $200 Japanese used kit, you know, red sparkle, you know, and that was my first kit. And the first song I played was Kiss's Detroit Rock City was the first song I played on that kit.
That's bizarre.
Yeah. No. It was Rock and Roll All Night, Party Every Day.
I was going to say, because Detroit Rock City's got that bass drum thing happening.
Yeah. So, I mean, I wasn't yet that advanced, you know, to a 12-year-old kid, you know, that was advanced. But yeah, I just remember Rock and Roll All Night, Party Every Day. That was like, and I remember my buddies came over, and I used to play air drums to everything, you know, and so I kind of had the mechanics down. And then my buddies came over when I got the kit, you know, and I set everything up where I thought it would be, you know, just from playing air drums. And, you know, all I remember is putting the record on and just cranking it up, you know, the stereo up on, you know, I don't even remember what kind of system it was. It was, you know, mom and pa system, you know, like a Zenith Victrola or whatever it was, and cranking that thing up. And I played the song, and my buddies were like, "Holy crap, you really know how to play drums?" I'm like, you know, because
you know, consider yourself a natural.
Yeah, I'm a natural. I can fake a lot of things, you know. I pretend what I'm doing, but I made it this far.
Well, that's like
but no, I had some formal training, you know, lessons and stuff with this girl. She was a drum major where I grew up, and well, she was like she led the band, but she taught me like rudiments and stuff, and I learned a little bit from that. But you know, I was like, well, how is this get? In hindsight, I know it applies now to the drum kit, but back then it's like, man, I want to play a full drum set. I don't need to be playing rat-a-tat-tat on the snare drum, you know. I need to, you know, I need the full deal, you know. So, but yeah, I mean, there's stuff I remember from that, and you know, and just growing up around it, you know.
So
indirectly,
your first influences were, like you say, Kiss and Peter Criss, and
Peter Criss was a big influence, and I'll, you know, dare I say, I was old enough to remember Ringo when he came up, but that's not. It was because my Uncle Joe, he listened to the Beatles, and also I remember the Dave Clark Five. He listened to the Dave Clark Five, and I remember that. You know, Dave Clark Five. You know, Dave Clark was the leader of the band. He was the drummer. You know, and I never wanted to be like the leader of the band, so to speak. But like Dave Clark, the Beatles, and of course, who could forget the fictitious monkeys, the monkeys, that was, that whole mystique of the band, being chased by girls and blah, 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 and all that kind of stuff. But, and then later on, I had a cousin, her name was Bernadette. She, from DC. I grew up in DC when I was a kid before I moved to Ohio. But she was like a preteen when I was young. So she was listening to like Zeppelin and Yes and Black Sabbath and Jethro Tull. And then, her brother, my cousin, we used to sneak down in her room and, put the records on and listen to that stuff. And I was like, that was kind of my introduction to the, that scene, the classic rock scene. And then, and then, of course, Kiss came in, Aerosmith, Alice Cooper. So, we got a dose of that classic rock. And on the other side, my Uncle Joe, he listened to a lot of Santana, Sly and the Family Stone, like, just all kinds of different. There's a conga player. His name is Cal Chater. We listened to Tito Puente. I mean, there was a lot of stuff that was around me when I was a kid, growing up, and there's still stuff I remember that I'll take from that I remember, but as far as like rock players, it was Peter Criss and those bands, like Sabbath, Zeppelin, and later I was to find out, John Bonham, Bill Ward, Bill Bruford, and I got, you want to find out who those players are in those bands that so then then the 70s, and all of a sudden, I was just the biggest Kiss fanatic, all through my preteen years, and then Aerosmith. Things started getting a little bit more sophisticated. Aerosmith, Ted Nugent, the Southern rock things, Skynyrd and Molly Hatchet, and then this band, 1979, Van Halen came up, and all of a sudden it's just like that was the band that kind of changed it. Just it turned everything. It made you look at things and listen to things a little bit different. Yeah.
I've said this many times, but Van Halen for our generation was like Jimi Hendrix in a previous generation.
I mean, Hendrix was a big part of my growing up too. I don't appreciate him as much as somebody that grew up in that era, but I can appreciate what he did, and he had some
well, he did the same thing. It's like he reinvented sound.
It was just a different generation, a different time. He always had great players, and then also in that same era, Cream, Eric Clapton and Cream and
Ginger
Baker and Jack Bruce. I mean, those cats were, three-piece, lighting it up, you know what I mean? As well as Hendrix and, with Mitch Mitchell and Noel Redding, those guys, were tearing it up. But to me, a tradition. I always thought a traditional band was like, a four-piece band, bass, drums, guitar, and a front man, or a front man that played an instrument. So. Yeah. But that was kind of who I learned from at an early age, and then it's I mean, from there it's like.
So you had a little bit of lessons, you say. With the girl with the rudiments.
She was like.
Did you ever go back to that in later years?
Did I ever go back to
working rudiments and sticking and all that?
Yeah, there was a guy, local guy in Columbus when I moved up here. He's still active. His name was Kerry Dactyl. Great player, well-rounded percussionist, And I used to see him at all the drum clinics and drum shops and concerts, and he would. I asked him. I said, "Can you, show me, teach me? I want to learn how to read and this and that." So it got to be where I would go over to his house, and we would, he had a kit there, and we would, he'd present to me some sheet music. Usually it was something I already knew, and I would just try to follow. It was kind of like learning in reverse. It's like I knew how to. It's like I knew how to speak, but I want to learn how does it apply to paper. And it was kind of like I wanted to see what I was playing, how it looked on paper.
Yeah.
And then it got to the point where it got to be, I probably took lessons from him for about a month, and it pretty much came down to me bringing over beer and just me and him just jamming, playing on drums and drinking beer the whole day. That's kind of what it turned into. So, and he's like, man, he goes, I don't have to show you anything. He goes, you're fine. He's like, you have an ear to pick things up. You have the mechanics to play what you need to play. And it's like, all you have to do is just keep listening and keep watching and just keep playing. And he's like, he was like, the only time that you would have to apply that is if you wanted to get into, he plays like timpani for like the church and stuff like that. I that's nothing that I would ever do. I'm a rock and roll drummer. But there's other types of music I can play. I've played in wedding bands that have played everything from Lady Gaga to Frank Sinatra, and I even had to pull out brushes.
Yeah.
And I'd have to, fake playing brushes and just to get the effect,
Yeah.
But if the phone's ringing and they're paying money, I'm gonna play.
Yeah.
So
well, it's not a bad life.
Yeah.
It isn't.
But
even if it is not your number one job, it does not matter.
Yeah. I've taken gigs on the fly where I've gotten the call that day. It's like, hey man, we have an Ozzy Osbourne tribute show, and our drummer kind of flaked out. Do you think you can do the gig? I'm like, yeah, because I've done the Ozzy thing, and I was like, oh, when's the gig? And they're like, it's tonight. I'm like, okay, I'll be there, So it's like, but it's if it were any other type of music and I didn't know the music, I wouldn't take the gig. But I've taken gigs where I'd say, yeah, I can do it. In my head, I'm thinking, man, I better learn these songs quick,
Yeah.
But I think I have a knack for learning songs. My retention and my recall, I think, is kind of what keeps me in the mix, so to speak. Because when I played in this.
Do you think the fact that you weren't a big reader, do you think that adds to your retention?
Maybe. I think so, because I had to rely on my my ear I would listen to things, and I would store it in my head, and I would learn songs and listen to songs thinking, one of these days I'm probably going to have to play this. And lo and behold, I was just like, there's, I don't know, I can't really even think of a song, the Romantics, what
I Like About You.
Yeah. All of a sudden it's like, you hear it on, and if you're from the 80s, you heard it a million times a day, and it's like, how could you not know the song?
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, you think the song, but when you actually have to play the song, it's kind of like, oh, wait a minute, it's not what it's a little, there's a little more to it than I thought, So.
And the drummer and the drummer was the lead singer.
Oh yeah, but I didn't have to sing. But on the same note, it's like, it's like, I think I was gifted with being able to hear something and kind of lock it in and retain it, because still to this day, I mean, I want it to be fun and not be a job to learn, you know, but sometimes I'll have to bone down and really have to you know, apply myself, because I've always just been so used to just jumping in behind the kit, and it's like, you know, let's play, you know, and there's not a whole lot of people, I don't think, that can do that, you know. Yeah, I mean, because I'll never, if someone asks me to come up and sit in, depending on the situation, I'll never back down. I'll always play, you know. And it's like, I remember a friend of mine, his band was playing, and he's like, "Hey, you know, what's that one? Smuggler's Blues. You know, Smuggler's Blues. You remember that?"
Glenn Fry.
Yeah, and I'm like, I'm thinking in my head, I'm waving, I'm nodding my head. Yeah, I know that one. I'm thinking in my head. Then I'm thinking Smuggler's Blues. I'm like, how the hell does that start? Number one, and then, you know, and yeah, and it's just, once you get going, it's like, then it's just like, you know, I just
starts and stops that are disconcerting.
Yeah. So and then I'll just kind of think, well, I'll just pretend I'm listening to the radio or watching MTV, you know, and it's like, then it all comes back to me. And then, you know, and then plus there's, you know, that's why I like jamming with other players. It's because it's kind of like, it's conversation, you know. I mean, sure, the song has a structure, but at the same time, you know, you look at your other players and it's like, okay, you look for hints, like when, you know, if you know your basic the form of the song, you know, and you just kind of feel it, or you look at somebody, you know, and you look at somebody's foot tapping for a tempo, or their, you know, accentuations with their body language for, you know, starts and stops or accents and stuff like that. And you just, you know, it's all about, it's communication.
That's one of the things I think that our generation and other people's generation, like the communication between musicians, that's a thing. That's a thing that a lot of kids nowadays, they think making music is something you do on your laptop. And it is for them. It is for them, but there's a special kind of bond that comes from playing music, communicating with one another. Musically in the same room, people playing together, that's a completely different animal.
And it's that, I mean, that's why that's kind of part of why I wanted to play music, is just the, you know, the connection with other people. And it was so frustrating starting out as a kid, like I said, when I got my first drum kit at whatever, 12 years old, and it's like, now I have to find some dudes to play with, and of course, naturally, you look to your friends. But at that age, you know, at 12 years old, you know, kids at that age, I mean, I still played sports and stuff with them, and but it you know, I was already bitten by the bug, you know. I was like, this, I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna get into it, you know. But what happened is, I always ended up playing with older kids that were already doing it. I just remember there was this kid like 3 doors down from where I lived, and he was probably, I was 12 and he was like 15. So, and at that point, I just remember he thought he was Ted Nugent, because he had a Gibson Les Paul, although, you know, that's not what Ted played, but nobody's
gonna buy like a Birdland.
But but at that time, I remember he had a Les Paul, a Gibson Les Paul, the real deal. He had a Fender Twin Reverb, and he played that through the dual showman cabinet, you know, like Ted did. So he had the Ted Nugent setup. And I remember he had a band that he would jammed with, and you know, they always played in his garage. And I just remember hearing them as a kid. The door was down and they were loud, and I lived 3 doors down, and you know, I would go over there when they were rehearsing, and I would sit, in the garage where they were jamming, and
Yeah.
getting my face blown off because it was so freaking loud in that garage. I mean, that setup was unbelievable, and the bass player, he was playing through, I remember he had it was a maroon Gibson SG bass,
Okay.
playing through, and the amplifier was like those big Blue Sparkle custom bass amp that was kind of like foamy with the blue
what year are we
sparkle.
talking?
This is like maybe 80.
Okay, I was gonna say, because that's like,
Yeah, I
that's a
know.
six-
I'm probably dating myself, but that's okay, because those were great times, and it's
Yeah.
just like that was a formative time for me too there when I was a kid, because that kid, Brian Graybell, he lived down the road, and then also next door to me was they were a big family. The Vetters, it was like 3 boys and 4 girls in that family. It was like the Brady Bunch. They lived next door, but the oldest, Jack, and the middle boy, Daniel, they played in a local band where I grew up, that were, tearing it up at the local clubs. And I used to hear them practice all the time, and they were older than I was, and I got to know, I was hanging out with the youngest brother, Bruce, and we used to go in there and sneak in and watch them practice. We weren't allowed to really be in there because they would do band stuff in there, with what bands are known to be doing behind closed doors. So we were kids, and we weren't allowed to see any of that stuff.
Mhm.
But all I remember is the door open and all this smoke rolling out. So
Yeah.
who knows what was happening?
When did you start playing with people?
I remember my first probably encounter was 7th or 8th grade. A buddy of mine saw that I played drums, so he attempted to play guitar. He actually got a guitar, like a Hondo 2 Les Paul copy, and some I don't know, just a Hondo 2 amp or whatever came with them as a package. And then we got a buddy of ours that was kind of into bass, but not really into bass, but I remember we played at a talent show in 7th grade. Actually, it was they called it the Gong Show, because the Gong Show was like a big show back in those times when I was growing up. So there's another show that'll date how old I am. But
roughly the same age.
Yeah. So anyway, we did the 7th grade Gong Show, and we played one song, and that song was, I was much older now, so I'm a little bit more advanced, and we played Detroit Rock City. And so, like you said, I started out playing rock and roll all night and party every day, and then so now I'm a little bit older and more advanced. So we played Detroit Rock City. And we won the Gong Show. So that was like my first live gig and taste of whatever monetary gain playing drums. So although it was.
So how did you learn that bass drum thing that Peter Criss did? Is that all by ear?
Yeah, because I was that determined to learn it, and there wasn't YouTube or anything. There wasn't even any videos that showed anything. I just put the headphones on and
needle to the groove.
But if I was playing it correctly, I probably wasn't. I'm probably not even playing it correct now. But
mm-hmm.
It sounded good. It felt good. So and it that's what So everything, I learned something every day. And that was a fun experience. And it's funny, just even to this day, people that remember me playing will still, I remember when you guys played the Gong Show in 7th grade and blah blah blah. It was so funny that people still remember that.
Yeah.
Like, wow.
Well, if you played Detroit Rock City, that was legendary.
Oh yeah, back then, and I just remember just the kids going crazy for it, you know, and even kids that even didn't even know about Kiss or cared about Kiss. And it's just the fact that, you know, here's kids our age that are playing this, you know, playing Kiss, you know, it's like they're not used to seeing that, you know. And then on top of that, it's like then there were other kids that were into it that I didn't know were into it. Now that it's like, hey man, he plays drums and he's, you know, he's okay. It's like now I got like all these other guys that I didn't know are like, you know, asking me to join them. And you know, then I made, you know, a new set of friends, you know, from that show, you know. So, you know, that's kind of like networking, you know, I guess back then, you know. So but yeah, ever since 7th grade, I've always had some sort of a band going on all through, you know.
The band DOA.
Oh yeah, that was my high school band, and that was everybody will bring up memories of that too, because what we used to do is we were too young to play in clubs or bars, you know. We would play pool parties. Like there was this big public pool called Dreamland Pool where I grew up. I grew up in Portsmouth, Ohio, down on the river. So there was a place called Dreamland Pool, and they used to have a pool party like on a Friday night, Saturday night. And I remember we would set up in this one corner. We had like you know, some cheap PA, and you know, I think I had just, this was probably like 1980, and I had just gotten my real set of drums. I just got like a real Tama drum kit, and I still have pieces from that. But that was like my first professional drum kit, and I remember making a drum riser out of picnic tables, and my drums were set up on these picnic tables, you know, and we had like it wasn't really at night, so it was kind of like when it was kind of like getting dark. It wasn't like a late night kind of gig, but yeah, we would play parties like that. But you know, like I said, there was limited places we could play. But what we used to do is we used to rent out like the Knights of Columbus. They had a hall. They had like the Knights of Columbus bar, but then they had like a banquet hall, and we would rent that out for like $200 a night, and we would you know, we'd put a show on. And it's funny, it's like every time we put a show, it would get packed, and something always happens. There was always like some type of you know, there's you know, underage drinking, or a fight would break out, because we would just send out flyers like everywhere. And it's like, you know, you get kids coming in from all over. And, you know, we would charge a couple bucks at the door. You know, the rent would get paid for the night, and then we'd have like money in our pocket like the rest of the night. And it's like, man, this is pretty cool. It's like, we need to find other places we could go. And we just started going different little places, and people started getting wind of, you know, DOA's having a party, they're doing this. And it's like, it was so funny, because we would try to do as much as we could in one set or in an hour, because it's like every time we would play, something would happen. It's like, you know, you know, I remember it's because we taped a show one time, and it was on cassette tape. And it's like, you could hear, we had this guy, his name was David. He was kind of like our manager. He took care of things. He would book the shows. He would find a place. And then we had a buddy that had like a big PA system and some lights. But you could hear, we're playing. And all of a sudden, our lead singer, he's like, hold on. He goes, and he's like, what? And he goes, and he's like, he goes, oh no, they're doing it again. And it's like, every time we did a show, it's like we would get shut down, because there was always something happening. It's like, you know, and this time it's like the sheriff.
What was your set list like?
What? We were doing at that time, like I said, this was like 1980. We were doing like Dawkins, some Motley Crue, Van Halen, maybe some Rat, and maybe some Skinner, you know, some Southern rock stuff, and maybe some Stones. And it was just, you know, it was just basic rock stuff, and some, you know, probably the hardest thing we did was maybe like some Motley Crue, Piece of Your Action, or
Okay.
Running with the Devil, just stuff like that, But it was just so funny because it just seemed like everybody knew. It's like, it was always a party.
Yeah.
Everybody was there. I mean, we were doing stuff. It's like if we were to do stuff like that now, I mean, we would probably, a couple of us would probably end up in jail because we would get like kegs of beer. People are coming and paying their money to get in, and there's probably underage drinking because we were like right out of, some of us were still in high school, some of us were out, but we had,
What was the drinking age?
at that time, I don't know. Yeah, I think it was still like 18. It was 18, but there was like that grandfather thing where if you were 18 at so and so year, you could still drink and blah blah blah. But anyway, yeah, we know there were people that were there that weren't supposed to be there, and they were drinking. And also another thing, I remember the lady was there. I remember we were checking out the place. And the lady was like, "Well, you're going to have security here too, right?" And we're like, "Yeah, we'll have security." And it just so happened that one of our buddies that was like working with us, that was like, helping us lug equipment around, he had a brother that was like a deputy sheriff. And so what he did is he took one of his brother's shirts that was a deputy sheriff shirt, and he wore it to our show. So basically he was impersonating an officer of the law, and he wasn't an officer. He just had the shirt on that said he was a deputy sheriff, of the county. And it's just like, I mean, he could have got busted for that. We could have got busted for underage drinking. And then there was like, I don't know, all I remember is like one show got shut down because there was like a fight in the bathroom, and there was, the bathroom got destroyed. And I think we ended up.
That sounds like a class reunion I had.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think we ended
class reunion.
Yeah, I think the money we ended up making on that had to go back into the place because we had we had to forfeit the security deposit and then pay for the damage to the restroom because I think the stalls got demolished. And I was like, oh my God, it was but yeah, but everybody remembers those times. It's like, oh man, every time you guys played, it was always a party, and it was fun.
It was a good time.
Oh yeah,
you're talking about it, what, 40 years later?
Yeah, it's just so funny. It
is 40 years later.
Yeah. So it's like, those are, if you want to call it, formative years,
Yeah.
But then, then I got involved in the club scene where I grew up,
Where was this?
Like I said, I grew up in Portsmouth, Ohio, but that area right down there on the river, Kentucky's across the street or across the river. West Virginia is only like a half hour east. Or Huntington, Charleston, West Virginia is like right there. So they called that the tri-state area.
Yeah.
And I worked with a guy who owned a sound company, and I wanted to learn about that stuff, because I thought that would be another way to learn about the business. So I would just help him lug stuff around and help him run cables, set stuff up.
Yeah.
And I learned a little bit about, I learned more about lights because I set up lights and, backlighting and spotlight, stuff like that, and how to, run all that stuff. But I used to set up, since I was a drummer, he knew I was a drummer, I would set up the mics on the drum kit and, help out with the, sound check if need be. And so whenever we would do the drum check, I would just get back there and do, give me kick drum, snare, hi-hat, blah, 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 So, and then when it came time to playing the kit, I would just play and just do stuff, like maybe it was a solo I was working on or just something, just a beat. And then, people would recognize that I had some sort of skill to play drums. And then what was funny is like a band that was playing there, I would work with them not only at different shows, but like at different clubs, because my buddy would use his sound system at clubs. This is before some clubs had house sound in clubs. But I would work with them, and I would work with the band. And then the one band that I worked with, their drummer left and went to Nashville back in the 80s, early 80s. Nashville at that time was, all I have to say is Billy Ray Cyrus. That was Nashville at that time.
Achy breaky heart.
Yeah. So that was Nashville at that time. So he left when that was blowing up. And so that band was like, hey, our brother Steve, or our drummer Steve, is leaving. And they were playing, old school metal, old school rock, hard rock. And they asked me if I wanted to join, and I'm like, yeah, sure. And I knew basically their song list, because I was working with them, doing lights and helping my buddy Ed with sound. So it didn't take any time for me to learn the set list. And from that point, I remember rehearsing with them for a good month, doing rehearsals, and then doing local shows just in that area, close to home. And then after that, they worked with a talent agency, booking agency at the time, called Long Distance, out of Memphis, Tennessee. And then we rehearsed for a month, practice for a month, and then all of a sudden after that, we were on the road for like 2 months. So I was gone for 2 months playing. We went everywhere, up to Michigan, down to the Keys, to
I'm always amazed at the number of Ohio bands make it to Florida.
Mm-hmm.
It is like, it's like the trail. It's like Mecca.
I don't know. What was Panama City was a big one.
Mm-hmm.
The Keys were always big. Sometimes Fort Lauderdale.
Okay.
But but we played. It all depended. Sometimes routing was so stupid though, because they would send us way up. This was a band. I don't think it was listed on my my questionnaire there, but it was a band called, at the time when I joined, it was called Nights and Days. They were out of Huntington, West Virginia. Well, most of the members were from there, and some were from Kentucky. But it was close enough that was considered local. And I got to be really good friends with them, and I still speak with some of them still to this day. And we ended up writing some originals, and we released an EP, that I don't even have a copy of. I think I have like maybe, I think he, my sound man, I think he burned some on a CD for me one time. Yeah, a while ago. But but it's cool stuff, to hear that. But I forgot
what about Shanghai? How did Shanghai?
Shanghai evolved from that band only because I was on the road. The lead guitar player, Brian Shepard, who I think you probably interviewed already, I think.
Yeah.
He was in Philadelphia and came back to Ohio, Lima, where he's from. And so we played this place in Lima called The Wayside. And we were coming back down from Michigan and made a stop in Lima before we were on our way home. And so we were playing there at the Wayside. And all I remember is, there's this long-haired dude off the side of the stage, I just noticed him. He was there. That's when bands used to play like 3 nights, 4 nights a week, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or Wednesday through Saturday, depending. That used to be the way it was back in the day. But I remember playing there, and there was this guy on the side of the stage, and it was Brian. And I was just noticed this guy was just like staring at me. It's like, man, this guy must be some kind of a freak, or he's, or he's, dare I say it, a homo. then afterwards, he came up and introduced himself and said, "Hey, my name's Brian Shepherd, blah blah blah," and he had just left Philadelphia. He played with a band called Metal Wolf, and I remember the music was playing on the PA system as we got done, and he said, I'm forming a new band. I want you to be my drummer. I'm like, well, I don't know if that's going to be possible, because I'm in this band, we're traveling, and I live here. He lives there in Lyman, I live there, and this is different times.
Yeah.
And so I mean, but we were there a couple days during the week, so he used to come in all the time, and he'd flip me some cassette tapes of some demos, and I'd listen to him. I was like, man, this stuff's pretty cool. And then it probably took me a couple months to say yes, that let's do this, because I remember stopping in Lima probably a couple times before I told him.
How far is that from your home base?
What's that now?
How far is Lima from your home base?
From Columbus now, you mean?
Yeah.
Well, Lima from Columbus is probably about an hour and a half, but at the time I was still living in Portsmouth, so it was probably a good 3 hours away. You know what I mean?
Okay.
But what happened was, I used to go to Columbus all the time and go to, well, it's the Newport, but it used to be the Agora, and I used to go to the Alrosa and/or Vets Memorial to go see concerts there in early '80s. And then the plan was to get a band, blah blah blah, and this is when everything was, metal was breaking out in LA, where Motley Crue, Van Halen, all those bands, Great White were starting to emerge. And so the plan was to get the band together and move it out west, but we needed to assemble, get things going, so I said, well, you know what? You're in Lima, I'm in Portsmouth. I said, Columbus is right between us. I said, and I told him, I said, man, the Gods are from Columbus. There's a scene that's there, because I remember I used to go to the, clubs and there see some local bands that were, I thought were national acts, but they were local. I was like, man, and so I said, why don't we plan on just forming in Columbus and get things going there and establish ourselves and then make the move, instead of like making the move blindly, so because I was like, man, you just have to be kind of smart about it, because everybody was like, just moving west, and it's like, well, I don't know anybody there, and I
like the gold rush.
Yeah, so it's like, and yeah, that's the goal, but so but our thing was, what we wanted to do is we wanted to play original music, and a lot of bands there were just playing covers. So not a lot of clubs in Columbus were catering to original bands, unless you were like a national, or if you were like at the time, well, of course the Gods, they were Gods, and Rosie was just coming on. The Muff Brothers, or Money, was were just getting on the map. And of course, who was it? It's like one of the first bands I remember seeing when I first moved to Columbus, ironically, was Shock 2, who I eventually ended up joining in a different what do you want to call it? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And also another one of the bands I first saw when I moved to Columbus was The Point, which was funny. And I'm friends with Merv and Dave and Jeff, but that was one of the first bands I saw, and it's just funny.
It was a scene.
Yeah. There were a lot of guys, a lot of bands that I didn't, that I saw, that I didn't know that at some point in time I would end up either playing with them or being friends with them. Yeah. Even like the guys in the Gods, and Rosie, all those guys. I was a kid and I was just like, man, these guys, they were like, I was like here and they're up here, and next thing you know, it's like I ended up I've jammed with a lot of those guys, and and or opened up for those guys.
Mhm.
So it's like I don't know. It's like this. It's kind of like a you know it's a family of sorts,
Yeah,
if you want to call it that.
yeah.
You
A
know.
chosen family.
Yes, I mean, some are still with us, some are not, but uh,
How'd you meet Ricky Soga?
um, I think just from being out at the clubs, like I said, that what Soga was in Shock 2. I think he's the only member in Shock 2 that's always been in Shock 2. You know what I mean?
What was his band?
Yeah. So anyway, he yeah, since high school. Um, I mean, I remember seeing him, heard of him, and then I never really got to know him because they left and went to Texas when they hooked up with Joey, and so they were gone. And then really, the way I really met Ricky was after Shanghai disbanded. I was kind of in limbo for a little bit, and then I remember there was this girl that was a photographer, and this is before internet and cell phones and this and that. But this girl that used to take was a photographer she said, I heard through the grapevine that Joey left and Ricky and Jimmy are coming back to Columbus and they're looking for a drummer too. And she knew that Shanghai had disbanded. She goes, you should look into joining Shock 2. I'm like, it's like, I was kind of like, I don't know. It's like, I don't know if they're into my kind of playing or if I'm into that kind of music or
So
whatnot.
here's a question for you.
Yeah.
Back then, were you a big double bass guy?
Always. Yeah.
When
I
did you
mean,
start?
that was,
You started with
was
double bass when you were a kid?
no, the first kit I had was a basic 4-piece kit. Um, After I saw Tommy Aldridge and Neil Peart is when I decided I need to get double bass,
Yeah.
And so, like I said, my first real professional kit was a Tama kit back in 1980. And so I ordered everything. I didn't like look in the catalog and say, I want that. It's like I knew what I wanted. I wrote everything down on a piece of paper and I gave it to the guy behind the counter. I said, this is what I want, and I wanted a Tama kit and I want this color and I want these sizes. And I picked out everything out. I still have the receipt. I mean, I think to this day, it was so cheap when I bought it back then. I think, I think it ended up being like $1,200 really. And it was cheap. Like a kit like that now is probably like triple that now, So, but yeah. But yeah, when that girl said that they were coming back, I think I got a hold of Jimmy first. Jimmy Miller, the bass player. I got a hold of him first because he was moving back, and he ended up moving in with a friend of his that he went to high school. So I contacted his friend Jim, and I said, "Hey, we didn't know each other." I said, "This is Ric Martelino. I heard Jimmy Miller's going to be moving in with you. Can you give him my number because I'm interested in joining Shock 2, And so Jimmy and I were in contact before I even actually met Soga, and then we met. I think we ended up going to like a Hooters or something to meet, or when they had Hooters in Columbus at the time, or maybe even a Denny's. We for some odd reason we always went to Denny's. But we met and hung out, and I think we ended up jamming a couple times on some songs just to get a feel, and everything seemed to feel good, and then the search was on for a capable vocalist,
Okay.
and then
You never played with Joey C. Jones.
no. What's funny is that the only I met Joey. Joey used to be what do you call it? A waiter at the Al Rosa
Mm-hmm.
back in the 80s, because he was in a band at that time called Pal Joey, and then right before he formed,
Sweet
I don't know
Savage.
who formed, yeah, Sweet Savage, and then they left, and then I remember uh, Joey always used to, get me free beers and whatnot, and I knew that he was in a band because they would always advertise Pal Joey and,
Yeah.
Joey. He wasn't Joey C. Jones at that time. I remember as Joey Crabtree.
Yeah.
That and but anyway, that's how I remember him. But it's funny. It's like, we were in the same band, but never in the same band together.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but that's my association with Joey, and
Mhm.
then and so Jimmy moved back, and then Ricky moved back, from Dallas, and then then we reformed, and then got Timmy Owings on vocals,
Yeah.
and from that point on, until the end, so to speak. So that was, we tried to ride the coattails of the demo or album that they had already done with Rick Nielsen at the time, which was kind of,
Yeah.
I mean, we re-recorded everything that they had done for Nielsen in Milwaukee, and tried to resubmit it, to the proper channels, but it was, too
It was a
little, too
different,
late.
and it was also a different band.
Yeah,
So
but we
that's like
thought at the
Mach
time,
Mach 3. You're in Mach 3, right?
let me see that. Yeah, at that time, yeah.
You're in
I
Mach
think
3.
so.
So Mach 3 sounded different than the Joey C. Jones era.
Yeah, but at the same time, I think to me it was kind of the same, but it it was at a different level. I think it had a harder edge to
Yeah.
it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It wasn't as poppy. Um, it just had more of an edge to it.
Yeah.
I think that's something that Timmy and I may have brought to it, but
So what is
because
this Van Halen Seinfeld story?
oh, that was a story. It kind of sets up like a Seinfeld episode because Ricky and I, being big Van Halen fans, me for well, even for Eddie, and obvious reasons with Rick and Eddie, but the way the story begins is we owe Scotty Ross, their tour manager, was a friend of Shock Two's manager, Scott Spellman, in Dallas or Houston, wherever he's from. But whenever Van Halen would come close to the area, we would always get passes for Van Halen, whether it be Cleveland, Columbus, Cincinnati, Lexington, anywhere close in proximity. So we would always have passes, and so I can't remember. I think this might have been Cleveland. Ricky and I had passes to go, and two other friends. So we go, but what sets up the story is Ricky. We had a friend. His name was Chad Stewart. He plays with Faster Pussycat now, and played with Bantanga. But he left and went to L.A. like a couple of years before. But he hooked up with a band called Zen Boy, who happened to be Matt Brook. Matt Brook is Eddie Van Halen's guitar tech, and also I think he's vice president of EVH now. With Eddie passed, so Wolfgang is because he's Eddie's son, is the president now. But Matt was always the driving force behind Eddie. So Matt was a guitar player also, and his band Zen Boy had Chad play drums with him. So Chad had that connection, and then I think Ricky visited Chad in L.A. and they went to the studio 5150, and so they're goofing off. They visit the music store. I think it was the original Guitar Center. They went to the original Guitar Center, and then so they're picking up some stuff for either Eddie or the studio or for Matt's personal use. But Ricky sees these little practice amps. They're called smoking amps, and cigarette boxes are like they're real small.
Yeah.
And they had these like 1.5-inch speakers in them. These little practice amps called smoking amps had this little 1.5-inch speaker in it with a 9-volt battery and 2/4-inch jacks, ones and in, ones and out. You could plug your guitar into it, and you could either use this, you can play the speaker that's in the the cigarette box, or you can hook another external speaker to it, and it's a practice amp. So Ricky asked Matt, he said, "Hey Matt, what kind of cigarettes does Eddie smoke?" And Marlboro Red. So he bought like a Marlboro Red smoking amp.
Mm-hmm.
So he buys one. He says he's going to give to Eddie, and he buys one, Ricky for himself for practice, and an extra. And he said they were kind of cheap, so he just bought them. So anyway, that was, I don't know, the summer of whatever year. And so fast forward from that time when he was at Guitar Center, we're going to the Van Halen concert. So Ricky's like, "Man, I get to give Eddie this smoking amp thing." So anyway, we're backstage after the show, and we're in the green room, having some drinks and some finger sandwiches or whatever. Door opens up. Here comes Eddie, and there's Eddie. And say, "Hey man, what's up? How you doing?" And so then Soga takes the smoking amp, throws it to Eddie, and Eddie catches it, and he's looking at it like staring at it, and he just starts shaking his head, and he takes it and he throws it back at Soga, and he goes, "I don't want it, I don't want it." And then he's like, "No, it's okay, it's a gift, I'm giving it to you." And then Eddie's just like, "This fucking guy, he's saying that I'm using these smoking amps, I don't even know what the hell they are." And yeah, and I'm looking at Ricky like, what? He's like, "What the hell?" And I'm thinking in my head, I'm looking at Ricky like, "Man, you just upset the gods."
Yeah,
It's like,
you made enemies with Eddie Van Halen.
I'm just like, "Oh no!" It's like you just messed everything up, and we're just looking at each other like, "What the hell happened?" And so Eddie's telling the story. He's like, "Yeah, this guy's saying he's putting in magazines that I'm using these smoking amp things, and I've never heard of them." And then Ricky's like, "No, no, no." So it goes, when I was in LA the last time, I told the guy that I was going to buy one and give it to you for a present, and blah blah blah, and he, and he goes, and so Eddie's just like, so he goes, "That's the story." He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "Well," he said, "Well, you just saved that guy's ass," because he said, "Because we were about ready to go into litigation and sue this guy for, I don't know." So he was about ready to sue this guy just because they were saying Eddie was using this product and Eddie had never heard of it. And I think this was like right around the time when Eddie hooked up with Music Man Music Man.
Yeah.
I think that was Eddie's first venture into what other than Kramer, where he was doing his own signature line with Music Man. So yeah, and so it was just one of those things. It's just like, man, it's just like, we're getting to meet Eddie Van Halen, him for maybe the second time. I think that was my first time to meet him. And I was just like, holy crap. It's like, this is no way to start off. And I was just like, holy crap. What did you do, man? It was just so hilarious. But it all stems back to that time he was like in LA, and all of a sudden it just like came full circle, and Eddie was about to sue this guy's ass, and we probably saved that guy millions of dollars for telling that story, But yeah.
So we're out of time. You know what this means? You know what this means?
Oh no! We have to do this again?
We're gonna get around too.
Oh well, yeah, we can do that. I mean, shit, I think we barely even scratched the surface,
Now that we know how to use the technology and everything. So
yeah, well, I'll be better prepared the next time. Yeah, everything's set up now, so
thank you so much for this. This is wonderful. It's like we got up to some Shock 2 stuff. I'm sure there's lots of Shock 2 stories also.
There's some there's so many funny memories that
Yeah.
some I can tell, some I can't tell. Some I'd have to tell you off the record, so to speak.
Yeah. That's
But
wonderful.
yeah,
That's
but
wonderful.
yeah, I mean, there's so many other stories, just with stories of the local scene, because I know this is what we're trying to cover here is
Yeah.
just the history of
How all the pieces fit together.
yeah, and you know what? It's funny, just everything that time. Um, it's hard to put a time like it definitely was the 80s, but it's hard to pinpoint when that magical time really was, because there was a happening scene. It was like there were so many different areas. You had your campus, you had your Alrosa, it just the whole thing was not to mention you have your little suburbs around Columbus that had things
Yeah.
happening. There was just so much going on,
Yeah.
and it's all related somehow.
Yes.
Everybody
It
knows
is.
somebody.
I think Columbus is a model scene.
Yeah,
A
and
model scene is like,
it's too bad that nobody. I mean, there are successful people and or bands from this area. It's
mhm.
just it's just a shame that nobody um tried to take advantage of it like they did, say,
Seattle.
Seattle.
Yeah.
It's the only. I think Nashville's always been there, but
Mhm.
they've always been known for country. Now there's like a lot of rock guys that are down in Nashville
Yeah.
now. So,
Yeah.
but hopefully, yeah, Columbus can, some of the generation can look back on my generation and say, hey, man, you remember these guys and this, and
Yes.
I encourage all these younger bands
Yes. The
to
gods, the shock.
yeah, yeah, keep the
Money.
faith, man. Keep playing. Don't give up. Just
Yeah.
do it.
So there will be around two. And
Well,
then I
yeah.
wanted, this is wonderful.
It went faster than I
Yeah.
thought.
As I do it would.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
So
It's hard to
wonderful
pinpoint everything in an
storyteller.
hour.
It's a good
Yeah.
storyteller.
Well,
Ready.
yeah. Well, just let me know whenever
Yep.
round two, and then we can probably hit on some other.
Yes, we'll start. We'll start at shock two and forward.
Yeah.
All
Maybe
right.
I'll have to keep some notes so I can kind of keep myself in check. But then again,
And
I just don't like
you don't
going.
want to keep yourself in check.
Yeah.
The stories are what we want.
Yeah. Well, good, man. Good.
Alrighty.
Good. Yeah.
So thanks so much. And
Yeah.
I
Well,
look
thank
forward.
you.
I look forward, seriously.
All right. Well, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I will see
All
you
right.
then. Thanks again.
All right. Talk to you later.